Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live. We are on your screens Monday to Friday between the hours of 6 and 8. It is a Motivation Monday, and I know we're all feeling that year-end slump. So we are definitely in need of some motivation and inspiration from Mr. Jabu. Let's take a listen.
Yes, good evening and welcome to Monday Motivation. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have had a lovely week, a great weekend, and are getting ready to wrap up the year. You know what? Last month actually was Mental Health Month. I didn't talk at all about it, but I've decided, you know what? Even though it's the month has already ended, mental health actually starts to become a massive concern towards the end of the year. And with holidays coming up, naturally, it's when actually people start to feel more isolated, people start to feel more lonely, and they are reminded of quite a lot that has happened throughout the year. And maybe some people have lost loved ones, some people have lost jobs, some people have gone through some traumatic events. We know that this year of 2024, globally speaking, has been quite traumatic. We are battling multiple wars. We have people that are in desperate need for some human intervention and even divine intervention, thinking of Palestine, thinking of what's happening currently between Russia and Ukraine, thinking of how it is happening in South Sudan. But sometimes what we don't pay attention to is actually what is happening right here at home in South Africa. And I've just been busy involved with putting together a couple of programs for some organizations around building safer workplaces. And normally this work leads to me doing quite a bit of research. And I came across quite a few reports from the World Health Organization, from CDC, from a couple of global institutions where research has been done around the state of mental well-being. There's one particular one that is called the state of mental well-being globally, state of mental well-being globally in 2023 specifically. What was fascinating about that is that right now, or at least in 2023 when this was published, South Africa is in the top 5 most struggling countries as far as mental well-being is concerned. As a matter of fact, out of 64 countries that were rated or that were researched, we came at the second lowest mental health quotient. We had the second lowest mental health quotient, which means that we had the second worst mental health levels globally. The one that was the last actually was the UK. And in terms of mental distress, also, we had the highest, out of the 64 countries, we had the highest mental distress globally. I mean, the levels of trauma that we are showing right now as a country are almost equivalent to the trauma that people are experiencing in war-torn countries or in countries that have been through the war. And there are multiple reasons for that, which I'm not going to be able to go into. But of course, top among some of those reasons right now is the high levels of unemployment, with our youth being the biggest sufferers at over 62%. And it is no wonder that in South Africa, actually, some of the worst sufferers of mental distress are young people. And this rate actually is no different from what we're seeing in the world, that actually globally, young people's mental distress is rising at a rapid rate. Since 2020, since COVID-19, unfortunately, the mental health strain that the world experienced has not subsided. It's only gone down by about 2%, which is not much in bigger scheme of things. But the question then becomes, what do we do with the current mental health, mental wellness pandemic, the struggle that we see globally? And I want us to just quickly look at what can we do to help ourselves to get out of the current situation that we are faced with. All right. Now, of course, I mean, if you are South African, you know what has been happening in the country. You know what's been happening with the taxi drivers, the fight between the taxi drivers and the citizens. You know what has been happening, the strain between immigrants and the locals. You know what has been happening in terms of corruption that is constantly being shown. You know what's been happening in terms of the crimes and the violence levels that we have in our country. Although all of these things are true, they are happening, it's also very true that we have very active citizenry in terms of advocacy for with the well-being of our society. And that is always something that we have as a country. And that is something that in terms of the world, actually, we are one of the most active countries as far as those social concerns, spaces are concerned. And so that is quite encouraging. But tonight, I want to give you a couple of tips on how you, at your own personal level, in your ecosystem, how can you improve your own mental well-being? And the first thing that is important is that it's always acknowledgement. It's always acceptance that you are not doing well. Like it's very difficult to solve or to address a problem that you are very busy denying. And I understand that sometimes it is quite difficult. And I saw that even when I do certain videos online, that so many people have such great difficulty accepting the challenges that I talk about to the degree that they start to, anyway, fight against the truth. But the truth is that truth is a good servant, and denying the truth can be probably one of the worst things you can ever do for your own mental well-being. And so acceptance is crucial. And the second thing in terms of that acceptance is that develop the language that can help you to describe what you are going through. Now, as a counselor, as a coach, and as a leader, most of the time, I am a mediator of communication. Part of my role, I understand it to be unpacking complexity and giving language to complex things that people struggle to articulate. And it's a strong recommendation of mine because I've seen it happen and help me to actually develop a language of whatever you're going through. Around mental health, it's important to understand that there's mental health and there's mental well-being. Mental health often refers to conditions that require a psychiatrist or a psychologist to officially diagnose. They tend to be somewhat biological. If you think about bipolar, if you think about schizophrenia, if you're thinking about cerebral palsy, if you're thinking about cognitive issues such as maybe autism, and those are actual conditions that one, by and large, cannot do anything about. Or if you're thinking about mood disorders that are extreme, somebody experiencing extreme depression, probably because of some chemical imbalance in the system. I'm not a doctor, so I can't go too deeply into that, but there is a clear distinction between mental health, which tends to be in itself a discipline that is well covered medically. And then there are factors of mental well-being, which has to do more with how do you experience your life? Do you experience the challenges in your life as something that is extremely difficult, that it begins to affect your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, your mental well-being, and for us who believe, even your spiritual well-being? So spiritual, like your mental well-being, for example, would start to affect things such as your sleeping patterns, can have some insomnia, your thinking patterns where you're struggling with rumination, playing certain thoughts over and over in your mind, and they don't escape, they don't leave your mind, to the degree that even when you're sleeping, you're not entirely resting because this thing that you're concerned or worried about is sort of attacking your mind. It's almost like, if you think about it in the context of a computer, it's like you have open tabs in your mind. They're not shutting down. And as a result, they're beginning to weigh heavily on your brain, that your brain starts to lag a little bit. You experience something that's called a fog, which then makes it difficult for you to concentrate, especially if you're suffering with another mental health condition that is clinically tested, such as ADHD, where you have difficulty paying attention over long periods of time or paying attention to certain types of discipline. And then you're finding that you're having difficulty, you are procrastinating, you are not catching up on the things you should be catching up on, and it's starting to affect your performance and even starting to affect your self-esteem. So there's a difference between those two. Mental well-being is about how are you currently experiencing the challenge you're speaking about. If you're having strain at work, how are you experiencing that? How does it play out in your system? And the great thing about mental well-being is that we can do a lot more about it physically to prevent it, to manage it, and even to overcome it. Whereas in the case of mental health, there requires a lot more medical intervention. Some of the conditions can tend to be chronic, and by and large, some of them you won't be able to do anything to change them. But mental well-being, on the other hand, is different. So acknowledging it and accepting that you are going through what you're going through. Develop the language that helps you to describe the fact that you are in distress, that you are fatigued, that you are having difficulty concentrating, that you are having difficulty sleeping, that you are, experiencing some kind of, pressure, physically speaking. There's a lot more that we can talk to about that, but let's go on to the next point. The third point about mental well-being is that it's important for us to engage in physical activities. There are two types of activities. There are activities that can help us to relax, that activities that can help us to become more resilient, in other words, to build our immune system. Because one of the things that suffers when our mental well-being suffers is our immunity, because the body produces quite a lot of acid, and then it makes it difficult to digest, for example, makes it difficult to, it starts to have attack the immune system, because your soldiers in the body don't thrive that much in an acidic environment. And unfortunately, the acidic environment, from what I understand, also that's where your autoimmune disease, such as cancer, for the ladies we're thinking about lupus, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, they can thrive. But anyway, as I've said, I'm not a doctor. I'm simply sharing this for educational purposes. So if you need to know more, it's important for you to consult with a specialist as far as that is concerned. But when it comes to mental well-being, you can do something about it. So physically, you can do exercises. Exercises helps to build, of course, your resilience in terms of muscle, but also in terms of your feel good, it's able to rise, make your dopamine to rise, but it's also able to help you to be strengthened physically as well. And then, of course, relaxation activities such as, of course, taking a rest, going out for some leisure walks, maybe go hiking. My wife and I like to take long walks. We sort of aim to walk at least 30 kilometers every week, splitting it over the entire week. So whatever your target may be, but it's important to not just get involved in high intensity activities such as an exercise, but also to get involved in some relaxation. Maybe you do that long bath. Maybe you actually go for that quiet coffee by yourself, so you can be alone with your thoughts and start to really pay attention to what is it that you're thinking, which then takes me to the next point. And the next point is about mindfulness, which is about really paying attention to what is going on in your head. What do you think about the things you're thinking about? What do you think about struggling financially? What do you think it means? Does it mean maybe some of your belief system make you feel worse, make you feel like you are bewitched, or feel like, if you're a believer, that the devil is against you, or maybe you have bad luck, or something more sinister is at play that makes you feel even more overwhelmed? Why do you think that way? And so mindfulness is crucial, to pay attention to the thoughts that you're thinking about what you're going through. And then the fifth thing that is important for you to do is that, have a plan on how to take charge of whatever it is that is making you feel overwhelmed. It's important to understand this. We can do a lot more to change ourselves internally, to put in the resilience internally, to shift the way we think internally, to build the language to tackle some of the challenges we have, far better than we can actually change certain things externally. We can't change the economy, we can't change the politics, we can't change some of these factors that I've already mentioned, but we can change the way that we view and we approach life. We can change ourselves from within. We can become people that are prepared and ready to tackle the challenges in life. So much more that can be said, but the last recommendation is that if you do need professional intervention, please go seek out psychologists, psychiatrists, if that is the case that you need, or counselors or therapists, if that is the case that you need. Most companies have employee wellness programs that can be able to help you to, get professional help without you having to pay, because they're already covering for that. My name is Jabu. I want to thank you so much this evening for tuning in. And hopefully you were able to learn one or two things that can help you to, again, tackle this challenge of mental pandemic, because it is a pandemic throughout the world. Hopefully you will be one of those people that will be able to tackle it. Have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your programming.